Lo stesso ragazzo che abbiamo guardato ieri, sempre Tabi, che ha fatto un video sulle build di tutti i gameplay di tutti gli standard PG del gioco, i 5 stelle. Ce lo guardiamo, magari vediamo un po' di PG, vediamo un po' cosa fanno. Così intanto pranzo col mio mezzo panino e
Hi
capiamo
there!
qualcosa.
In this video I go over each of the 5-star characters available during CZN's playtest, giving you a brief overview of their kits to establish potential reroll targets, whether you base it on their gameplay or presumed meta value. Since the developers will likely make adjustments before launch, I won't dive too deep into specific cards or upgrades. Instead, I'll focus on each character's general playstyle and utility. Keep in mind that all of this is based on early game experience, so it's simply guesswork how well the damage dealers scale into the late game. At the end, I will approximate a tier list for easy reference, but take it, and any other one you see, with a massive grain of salt.
Okay.
Every character was viable in their own way, providing you with the freedom to choose based on preference without compromising on value. If I manage to find the time, I'll cover the 4-star characters in a separate video, since they are less relevant for rerolling. With that lengthy preamble out of the way, let's get into it.
Comunque sta dicendo, probabilmente sono stati bilanciati e i valori delle robe saranno diversi, quindi non ha molto senso star lì a parlare di numeri, però per capire come funziona il PG, che cosa fa, le sue meccaniche, ci sta.
Calyp is a defense scaling vanguard of the light/instinct element, who was an absolute
Defense Scaling Vanguard. Light Element.
powerhouse during the beta. Her gameplay revolves around high-cost cards that can be chained for massive AoE and tenacity damage, as well as shield generation. The core of her deck is this card, Vulture Launch or Ejection, which both deals damage and grants a shield,
Abbiamo visto
coming at a
ieri.
hefty cost of 3 AP. It has 3 tags which ensure that it doesn't just become a brick in your hand. First, when another 2-cost or higher card is played, cards with the Celestial tag activate as well. After the activation, it returns from the graveyard to the hand due to retrieve.
Ok. Lei si basa sull'avere carte ad alto costo, dare shield e fare toughness damage. E qua ti sta spiegando la meccanica che abbiamo visto ieri, ovvero Celestial. Se usi una carta che costa 2 o più, questa carta viene castata in automatico e poi ti torna in mano.
Then, Retain carries over the card to the next round. The retrieve effect is removed after occurring once, so you can't loop this infinitely, but the retain effect ensures that you can keep Vulture Launch in hand when there's no opportunity for you to trigger Celestial. This makes her quite AP efficient, because you're getting the benefit out of a card without having to pay its cost. Note that Calyp obtains Silver Veil when using Vulture Launch. Character core mechanics are often tracked by icons next to their pictures.
Yeah, questo è lo stesso PGAO. È proprio lui. Non è una versione alternativa. Cioè, è ufficialmente lo stesso. Ok, sta dicendo i PG hanno delle meccaniche chiave oltre alle carte, delle passive chiare. E lei ha ste tre stack che prende quando gioca questa carta qua, credo. Ok.
In her case, reaching 3 stacks upgrades Vulture Launch for 1 use, but let's not dwell on the details since her kit might get adjusted. It just illustrates how central the card is to her kit.
Wait. Quando ne hai 3 cos'è che è? Te la fa usare, non ho capito.
In her case, reaching 3 stacks upgrades Vulture Launch for 1 use, but let's not dwell on the details.
Ah, fa un upgrade alla carta per un uso, ok.
Since her kit might get adjusted.
Ok.
It just illustrates how central the card is to her kit. When not in hand, she can draw it via this card and simultaneously cast a shield. Her ultimate creates a base version of the card which essentially she can draw it via this card and simultaneously cast a shield.
Vulture Launch può essere pescata tramite un'altra carta che gli dà anche shield, ok.
Her ultimate creates a base version of the card which essentially allows you to duplicate Vulture Launch in your deck.
La sua ultimate ti fa duplicare Vulture Launch, ok. Quindi tutto il suo kit si basa su quella carta in pratica.
Here, she has 4 cards with the Celestial tag in hand. Playing one activates all of them. unleashing 2 big AoE attacks while generating a meaty shield.
Questo era quello che dicevamo ieri. Questo è quello che dicevamo ieri. Cioè lei ha...
Here,
c'ha 4 carte con Celestial. Quindi basta che attivi una carta a costo 2 e le attiva tutte insieme senza pagare nessun action point.
she has 4 cards with the Celestial tag in hand. Playing one activates all of them, unleashing 2 big AoE attacks while generating a meaty shield. If you're not that convinced of her power, here's another one of her cards that mixes 2 effects, tenacity damage and shielding. The tenacity damage is fixed, meaning it disregards elemental advantage.
Shield che prende. Ok. Cioè sta carta qua fa danno fisso tenacity a tutti. Di 2 stack. E dà shield al team. Okay.
Against these opponents, the skill eliminates 2 out of 3 bars of their break gauges. By breaking all 4 targets, the skill restores 4 AP after having cost 2.
Wait. Wait, what?
4 AP after having cost. Skill eliminates 2 out of 3 bars of their break gauges. By breaking all 4 targets, the skill restores 4 AP after having cost 2. Calypso stood out from the playtest because she was good at doing multiple things.
Ti rigenera un AP
Groups of
per ogni
enemies
nemico
with
che
her AoE
brecchi.
damage, create strong shields while doing so, and break tenacity for bursts of bonus AP. When fully leveraging the Celestial effect, she can even be highly cost effective. Moreover, she's not restricted by team building options, though she would prefer allies with 2 or higher cost cards. While she likely shines less on late game single target boss fights, she will trivialize a lot of the early content. If they don't change her significantly, she's the prime reroll target for a comfortable early game experience.
Ok, lei è broken praticamente, va bene. Quindi shield, toughness damage a ruota, skill che non costano action point. Ok, quindi è nerfano, chiaro. Ok. E rimane must pull, cioè è una bomba totale, nel senso, però.
Meilin is a single target focused striker of
Questa è la
the
mia
Pilot
must
Passion
pull in
element
realtà.
with the unique ability to apply elemental weakness to her targets.
Mi piace un sacco.
This boosts both skill and tenacity damage, making her likely a core member of current and future
Questa prende a
Passion
cazzotti e non ci pensa
Her
troppo.
gameplay
Grazie
is straightforward,
Sable.
as she kicks off a fight with this upgrade card, that permanently grants her the aforementioned ability. The weakness gets
Yeah, no, anche sì, questa qua è la mia must pull sicuramente. Ok, lei a inizio battaglia parte sempre con questa carta che aumenta del 40% tutti i danni di tutte le carte che fa d'ora in poi. Quando usi una carta attack mette Passion Weakness al
upgrade
target.
card, that permanently grants her the aforementioned ability. The weakness gets applied after any of her attacks, and subsequent
La weakness viene messa dopo aver fatto l'attacco.
hits from any one of the passion element benefit from the bonus. Additional attacks will extend the duration of the weakness debuff. I've explained the importance of type advantage in my combat guide, so let me just briefly recap.
Wait, cos'è che fa? Mette Weakness Fire, non ho capito. Ah, mette debolezza
The
fuoco ai
weakness gets applied after any
nemici.
of her attacks, and subsequent hits from any one of the passion element benefit from the bonus. Additional attacks will extend the duration of the weakness debuff.
Ah, lei mette debolezza fuoco ai nemici. Ok, e la toughness è giga importante, tra l'altro, giustamente. Ho capito adesso, perché abbiamo visto già che fai tipo il triplo di toughness damage quando un nemico è debole al tuo elemento.
I've explained the importance of type advantage in my combat guide, so let me just briefly recap.
Pendra, ma sei nel tuo hater arc oggi, cioè a caso.
Weakness damage is a final multiplier, increasing skill damage by 25% after all other bonuses have been applied. Then, in this side-by-side comparison, you can see the difference in tenacity damage between a
Qua si
type
sta facendo vedere la
neutral and
differenza
type
di
advantage
tenacity
attack.
damage.
Breaking an enemy restores energy or AP, which makes it
Firefly.
highly relevant to the flow of combat.
Crit incazzato.
That said, Meilin is dedicated to her role as a breaker. She has a zero-cost card to ensure RNG doesn't swindle her out of attacks, and another skill which doubles her weakness damage and AP gain when breaking.
Ok, c'ha una carta che gli raddoppia quanti AP guadagna quando fa break e gli raddoppia il weakness damage. Cioè il toughness damage e il weak point damage, no? Me lo hai venduto. Ah, Martors è che mi piace, capito? Cioè non è... andiamo. Se lo guardo perché mi piace, nel senso, non per altro. Ma ci sta, ma è carino, è carino.
Skill which doubles her weakness damage and AP gain when breaking. She could also get upgrades for bonus tenacity damage and had good access to multi-hit attacks.
Se becchi prendi uno, con questa ne prendi tre? No, prendi due, no? Raddoppia. No?
Her ultimate was bugged during the playtest, but supposedly it would boost her own crit chance and damage.
Guardala.
Overall, she excelled as a single target damage dealer and breaker.
Ah, la ultimate gli buffa crit, ok. Va bene.
In particular, when your roster is still limited and you can't field a lineup for every element, Malin will be one of the most useful characters to have. There are multiple strong passion characters at launch, including 4 stars, so building a team around her should be simple enough.
Ok. Comunque... Non ho capito il fattore roguelike dove sia. Tutto il gioco è roguelike, Kiki. Non c'è una modalità del gioco che non lo è. È tutto così. Cioè tu, a parte il farm di ascensione, quelle robe lì, insomma, però... Tu ogni volta che finisci un encounter oppure i personaggi si potenziano in battaglia, ottieni, ottieni carte nuove, dei buff, dei potenziamenti alle carte che hai. Yeah, è un deck builder roguelike, letteralmente. È tutto così. E poi i potenziamenti che ottieni te li salvi in un preset, più preset che puoi avere, molti di più. E... Vabbè, è un tipo di... Cioè, roguelike si intende quando tu hai dei progressi che continuano ad arrivare pian piano che giochi, nel senso, no? Yeah, Thomas qua c'ha tipo 1 migliaio di preset per PG, o almeno mi sembrava che non avessero limiti per ogni tipo di salvataggio che ti puoi salvare. Non sono gli stessi preset, è un'altra cosa, però sì.
Even if her
Comunque, in generale, lei mettendo debolezza a fuoco ti può far funzionare un monofire team ovunque, essendo che la toughness e la weakness è importante, non è male.
damage gets outclassed eventually, her utility will likely continue to make her relevant for the element.
Ok, giustamente lui dice, magari anche se i suoi danni vengono superati in futuro, il fatto che metta debolezza a fuoco... Shit, scusate. Il fatto che lei metta debolezza a fuoco non andrà benissimo, cioè andrà benissimo anche in futuro, nel senso.
Chiron is a psionic of the Dark/Void element who, next to Kalib and the Foster Lucas, is one of the few characters who
Psionic Void.
excels at dealing AoE damage.
AoE
His core
damage,
mechanic
ok.
revolves around card exhaustion, which is to say he benefits when cards are removed from the deck.
Ok, la sua meccanica si basa sul bandire carte. Ma allora, io credo che devi per forza capire le meccaniche.
He himself has 2 abilities which create exhaustible cards, here named Futility, that have no effect and are simply there to serve as fodder. He can banish them via his ultimate or by playing them directly, which is not preferable since they cost AP. Therefore, you generally want him paired with other characters that either help him banish the cards, that run exhaust cards themselves, or who generate a lot of AP. Once you accomplish a setup, his nukes have their cost reduced or their damage boosted for a turn.
Ok, cioè tutta la meccanica di base di lui è creo delle carte da poter bandire, ogni carta che faccio bandire dal team o bandisco io guadagna degli effetti, faccio più danno, costa di meno, eccetera, eccetera.
That said, he can upgrade his blank cards to deal minor damage, making him less reliant on another teammate and potentially clearing the way for a hyper carry comp. With an AP generator and amplifier by his side, he's likely to put out incredible numbers.
Spende parecchi action point, quindi se c'è qualche action point generator nel team non è male, ok? Va bene.
As noted before, Charon most effectively exhausts his utility cards via his ultimate, which consumes them for bonus damage. Once you have his ultimate available, you will want one of his creation cards and as many of his nuking cards to unleash a turn of full-blown destruction. As for potential allies, the exhaust card tag is not particularly rare. In fact, there are multiple characters who have such cards at zero cost. To give a few examples, Aurea creates summons that are exhausted when played. Bullet characters like Luke fall to the same category, though he can be less...
Ah, ok, perché lui non si potenzia solo... Lui non si potenzia solamente con le sue carte bandite, ma con tutte. Quindi alleati che bandiscono le proprie carte, anche loro sono una buona sinergia. E qua sta dicendo tipo Ordea con le sue cure. Oppure Tressa con i Shadow Daggers.
One of Charon's best partners is Tressa with her Shadow Daggers, assuming one can still get them to zero cost at launch. Charon was the heaviest hitting damage dealer during the playtest. His AoE damage was outstanding, and his single target capabilities were competitive. As a trade-off, his setup is more complicated than that of his peers, limiting his team building options. Nevertheless, with Ray and Tressa, he has two free decent 4-stars that help make him work right from the start. While pure damage dealers are the likeliest to get power crept, I'd expect Charon to be one of the better characters for clearing content.
Ok.
Renoa is a hunter of the dark/void element that specializes in single target burst damage via extra attacks.
Single target
She
extra
creates a
attack
bullet
da
that,
Renoa.
as other bullet cards, is exhausted when played. However, unlike other bullets, it can be sent to the graveyard, which triggers an extra attack. Therefore, she's incentivized to not use her bullets and build up as many of them as she can, so that more and more bonus attacks are unleashed as the battle progresses.
Ok, quindi lei ha ste carte proiettile che se non le usa vengono scartate a fine turno per fare danno. Quindi è incentivata a non usare le sue carte per fare tutta una serie di extra damage a fine turno, in pratica.
Her kit revolves around these bullet cards, either to generate more bullets or by discarding them.
Ok, tutto il suo kit si basa sul generare o scartare i proiettili, ok?
Discarding the bullets triggers her extra actions and retains them in deck, while simultaneously boosting her attack cards. Her playstyle is on the slower side, but her abilities flow well, and discarding cards is a cost-effective gimmick. Her setup is complete once 10 bullets are created, which is the card limit one can hold. Then, she can use her ultimate to draw all her bullets from the deck, after which she simply needs to end her turn to end the enemy in style.
Ok. Ok, praticamente quando generi 10 proiettili, lei con la ultimate li prende sia dal mazzo che dal cimitero, li mette tutti in mano, poi finisci il turno e glieli spara tutti in faccia al nemico, ok?
Of course, if the enemy survives, her bullets remain in deck, so you don't have to start over from the beginning.
Se il nemico sopravvive a questa roba non è un problema perché i suoi proiettili non vengono mai scartati definitivamente ma tornano nel mazzo.
Her playstyle may not be well suited for shorter fights, but she's likely the best boss killer at launch. That said, many bosses have stacking buffs that need to be removed by attacking multiple times per turn. Unfortunately, out-of-turn attacks usually don't count,
Yeah, l'abbiamo
Renoa
visto
being the rare
ieri.
exception.
Ah,
Her extra attacks are treated like regular attacks, making her more effective at countering enemy mechanics than other damage dealers that rely on non-active attacks.
ok, quello che sta dicendo l'abbiamo visto ieri, i boss hanno solitamente delle stack che richiedono di fare multi-hit per essere tolte. Prendi meno danno, fai più danno, eccetera. E solitamente le extrazioni, follow-up attack e counter-attack non funzionano, l'abbiamo visto. Però le sue extra attack sì, vengono considerate come hit normali, ok?
Overall, she felt like a very solid, cost-effective and self-reliant damage dealer, imposing little to no team building restrictions.
Yeah, è un buon
For the
DPS senza
foreseeable
restrizioni di
future,
team
I
building,
expect her to
ok?
be one of the best characters to clear bossing content.
È buona single target,
Hugo
insomma,
is a
ok.
hunter of the wind/order element.
Hugo,
that
non ho
revolves
visto una
around
mazza
extra
su di
attack
lui.
damage, though less bursty and more sustained than Renoa.
Fa sempre anche
He
lui
starts the
extra
battle by playing
damage,
an upgrade card
ma
that
meno
grants him
burst e
stacks of hunt
più
commands whenever
costante.
allies use non-attack cards. When he has at least one stack, which you can easily track via the crosshair symbol next to his picture, he will perform an extra attack when anyone, himself included, deals single target damage. Once triggered, a stack is consumed. Hunt commands
No, non è lo stesso Blizzard. È un altro, è un altro. Stiamo vedendo i personaggi 5 stelle. Ok, praticamente quando gli alleati usano carte non attack, lui guadagna quelle stack che consuma facendo extra danno quando attacchi un nemico single target.
Stacks up to 5 times and grants higher damage multipliers with more stacks.
Più stack hai e più danno fa questo extra damage.
All of his kit is either about generating more stacks
Yeah,
or buffing his extra attack damage, including his ultimate.
Ok, tutto il suo...
When fully stacked and buffed up, he
non
could
avevo
reach
visto
impressive
l'ultimate
numbers
lui.
during the beta. While his playstyle is extremely simple, he can be played two ways.
Lo si è giocato in due
Either by
modi.
aggressively using his cards to ramp up quickly,
Usando
or
le
by
sue
only
carte per
having him assist
accelerare
via
la
his
sua
extra attacks,
carica
giving him the role of a cost-effective
o farlo diventare un
sub-DPS.
sub DPS, ok?
His team building options are fairly broad, since he only requires allies who use some non-attack cards, which most healers/supports do, and single target attacks, which is very common. While perhaps not as exciting as Renoa in her moments of full burst, his sustained damage makes him a decent choice for most content. Keep in mind though that Hugo's Hunt Commence, like most out-of-turn attacks, doesn't work in getting rid of certain boss mechanics. He did have a few multi-hit attacks though, somewhat remedying the issue.
Beh, molto semplice. Cioè, l'idea di base è abbastanza semplice. Gli alleati usano carte non attack, lui genera stack. Gli alleati usano carte attack, spendere stack per fare extra danno. O comunque lui se le può generare e spendere da solo anche, ok.
Veronica
Veronica.
is a ranger of the fire/passion element who fully embraces the role of a sub-DPS.
Sub DPS è
Her
poco,
main
quindi sta
mechanic revolves around her
bene...
ballista
Sta bene con la sbirilla, con Meilin. Ok.
cards, which,
Ballista
after
cards.
playing her turn 1 upgrade card, she continues to automatically generate at the
Continua a
start of every
generare
turn.
queste carte a inizio
These are
turno.
unplayable attack cards that are consumed for an extra attack when ending your turn.
Stessa meccanica di Renoa. Lei a ogni turno genera queste carte che non può giocare ma che spende per fare danno quando finisce il turno. Sì, Blizzard.
Her abilities boost her extra attack damage via stacks of reload, which can be tracked at the top with the arrow icon.
Ok.
Reload stacks up to 3 times, and each shot consumes 1 stack per target hit. She could increase the number of ballista cards per round, and upgrade them to different variations. Here for instance, they change to dealing AoE damage, rather than randomly attacking a single enemy. With that, she turned into a serviceable AoE damage dealer that was able to chip down enemy groups without requiring AP after her initial setup.
Ah, ok. Quindi queste carte che lei genera inizio turno può buffarle con il resto delle sue carte, farle diventare OE, eccetera, eccetera, nel senso, ok. Non ho capito la meccanica delle frecce, però, com'è che le genera?
Extra attack damage via stacks of reload, which can
Le sue abilità boostano il suo danno in base a quante stack di reload hai.
be tracked at the top with the
Ne può
arrow
staccare
icon.
massimo 3.
Reload stacks up to 3 times,
Ok.
and each shot consumes 1 stack per target hit.
E ogni colpo extra consuma una stack.
She could increase the number of ballista cards per round, and upgrade them to different variations.
Ok, comunque le ballista card sono quelle che generano in automatico a inizio turno, ok. E le può aumentare quante ne genera e modificarle, ok.
Here for instance, they change to dealing AoE damage.
Va bene.
Her ultimate further adds to this role by providing a defense ignoring AoE attack that fully recharges her reload stacks.
La ultimate gli maxa le stack di reload a 3, è AoE e ignora difesa.
After her initial damage setup via her upgrade cards, she doesn't actually have any attack cards aside from her basic starter cards, which she'd rather remove from her deck entirely. Instead, she has skill cards that help cycle through the deck, in one case explicitly excluding her own cards from the draw. This makes her slot seamlessly into practically every lineup, in particular when supporting AP-hungry damage dealers that want to cycle their cards as quickly as possible. That said, I doubt she will be the best in slot choice for any team, but her hybrid role as a cost-effective sub-TPS and generic card cycler should make her viable in virtually all content and lineups.
Interessante. Cioè il suo... Lei siccome c'ha la passiva che si genera le carte e le spende da sola a fine turno, maggior parte delle sue carte tendono a non fargli... a rimuovere le sue carte dal mazzo completamente in modo che le carte del resto del team ciclino meglio. Ok.
Her playstyle is also extremely beginner-friendly, as her mechanic doesn't require any attention.
Ok.
Magna is a defense-scaling vanguard of the War.
La preferita di Penguin.
Her kit is very simple and
Defense
boils down to
scaling,
two
Vanguard,
things: shielding and counterattacks.
shield e counterattack, ok.
Counterattack is a stacking buff that consumes one stack per instance of damage received to return the favor.
Ok, counterattack è una stack che carichi, poi quando ti attaccano colpisce chi è.
You see the enemy do a multi-hit attack, triggering a total of 5 counterattacks. The counter multipliers increased when the triggering attack was completely blocked, making teams built around this gimmick a worthwhile archetype.
Ah, holy shit, se ti attacca 5 volte fa 5 counterattack.
Moreover, she can upgrade her counters to deal AoE damage, so that she doesn't
Può
fall
upgradeare il
behind
suo
against
counter per
larger
fare
enemy
danno
groups.
e...
She has multiple upgrade cards that ensure she continuously receives counterattack stacks, as well as crystallization.
Ok, cioè tutto lei si basa sul caricare le stack di counter che può fare e potenziarli. E ha anche crystallization. È un buff che genera shield alla fine del turno.
Which is a buff that passively generates shields at the end of the team's turn.
Yeah.
Her skills usually either create shields and or grant counter stacks,
Ok.
fully locking her into
Quindi
this
shield
playstyle.
e counter a ruota. Ok.
Unfortunately, counterattacks, like most other out-of-turn attacks,
Questo
were
lo-
not able to strip enemy buffs.
Yeah, questo lo diceva. Siccome i nemici hanno questi buff a stack, cioè attaccami tot volte e io prendo più danno o faccio meno danno, no? I counter attack e i follow up attack e gli extra damage, tranne alcuni, non contavano per la rimozione di questi. Ok.
Assuming nothing's changed about that, the counterattack archetype isn't well suited for boss fights.
Yeah, ok. Sta dicendo se è una cosa che non verrà cambiata alla release, l'archetipo non è adatto nel senso. Ok.
That said, while she could slot into any lineup as a shielder, her best team included Maribel, who's essentially a slightly more offensive 4-star version of Magna, as well as Amir, who provides shields and damage mitigation, as well as...
Grazie Seira.
Buona giornata a tutti.
Grazie Seira, grazie mille. Ok, sta dicendo che non ha delle sinergie particolari se non altri PG che sono simili a lei.
follow-up attacks upon shield application. This lineup is centered around meaty shields and lots of extra attacks.
Ah. C'è un PG che fa follow-up attack quando riceve shield, ok.
Which made for an extremely safe playstyle. However, it could be slow at times when the enemy attack patterns weren't overly aggressive.
Yeah, se il nemico attacca poco non è il
Overall,
massimo, chiaro.
Magna felt too locked into her niche archetype that didn't offer much flexibility when it came to building an optimal team around her. If her shield generation gets strong enough in the late game to withstand most enemy attacks, she could slot into practically any lineup though. Shields add a lot of comfort to the dungeon explorations, since they prevent mental stress accumulation. During the early game of the playtest, she was inferior to Calip in that role, and couldn't provide any amplification or break utility to make up for it. Nevertheless,
Yeah, sta dicendo che inizialmente, cioè, è buona per gli scudi, perché gli scudi abbiamo visto che non ti fanno aumentare trauma, quindi sono ottimi. Però era una versione scarsa di Calip sotto quell'aspetto lì, che è la prima tizia che abbiamo visto.
if Calip gets rebalanced, Magna may become a worthwhile flex pick, irrespective of the counterattack gimmick. Orlea is a controller of the light/instinct element, who supports the team with amplification,
Buff e
and a bit
healing.
of damage.
Ok.
Her core gameplay revolves around summoning and evolving 3 types of creatures that come with different effects and rarities from 1 to 3 stars.
Ha 3 creature che deve evocare e potenziare.
When created, her creature cards usually start at either 1 star or 2 star rarity, depending on the ability. Once 2 creatures of the same rarity are in hand, they automatically fuse to the next higher rarity, until they reach 3 stars.
Ok, cioè letteralmente lei è tutto il gameplay di reverse in un PG. Cioè lei genera queste 3 creature che partono da 1 stella o 2 stelle, e quando hai le stesse creature con lo stesso numero di stelle in mano le fonde in automatico per potenziarle. Ok.
Each evolution upgrades their effects. Her summons come with the retain effect, meaning they remain in hand until played, after which they are removed from the deck. When retained, a secondary bonus effect activates. For instance, her 2-star Softie boosts all damage by 20% if played, or instead boosts the next attack card by 10% if retained.
Ah. Hanno 2 effetti. le sue carte. Uno se la usi e l'altro se la spendi. Siccome le sue carte rimangono in mano se non le usi. Ok.
That way, Orlea gets a benefit out of her cards while waiting for their evolutions. A Swifty is simply an attack card that boosts its damage multiplier for each turn it remains in hand. To speed up the process, she could also activate the retain effects of her own cards in hand. Her attack summons could get to decent damage multipliers this way, though given the lengthy setup, I wouldn't call her much of a damage dealer, unless you plan to sacrifice her other utility for it.
Ah, ok, ha delle carte che ti fa attivare subito l'effetto di quando rimarrebbero in mano e ci sono delle carte che guadagnano danno più turni passano in mano senza usarle. Ok.
One downside to her mechanic is that the maximum card limit of 10 is easily reached with her on the lineup.
Yeah.
Especially when other allies generate or retain cards, you could often run into situations where drawing cards was no longer
Il problema con la sua
possible.
meccanica è che raggiungi facilmente il cap di
This is
10
more of a
carte in
beginner
mano.
mistake, as you will learn to play around this limitation, but this is just to illustrate that she won't fit well into teams where multiple characters want space in your hand.
Ok, non sta bene con altri
While I
PC
was
che
not
vogliono
particularly
tante carte
impressed
in
with her
mano ogni
damage
turno.
amplification, her ability to sustain the team was unrivaled. Her Tuffy card grants healing if retained or Shield if played. With multiple high-ranked Tuffies in hand, she could essentially heal the team back to full health without any AP cost whatsoever. That said,
Ok. Può curare o shieldare. Ok, è un'ottima sustainer. Ok.
her creature evolution gimmick is slow and not without risk. If Orlea goes into a mental breakdown, all of her summons are gone, and you'll have to start over.
Ah,
Overall, I'm not convinced that her cards were
se va in
effective enough
mental
to
breakdown
compensate for the
perde tutte le
downsides.
summon però.
If they tweak her kit so that she is able to juggle all three roles of Amplifier, Healer, and Sub-DPS, she could become a universal asset for most teams. If she ends up just being a great healer, I'd rather not bother with her complex playstyle and instead just use Mika, a free 4-star that fills the role perfectly well.
Ok, sta dicendo se gli potenziano i danni o fa... Oh mio Dio. Sta dicendo se gli potenziano i danni o fa altro. Probabilmente sta bene ovunque, altrimenti c'è un playstyle un po' complicato eventualmente. Ok.
Rin is a striker of the Dark Void element and a selfish hyper-carry DPS.
Hyper carry
Her core
DPS.
mechanic revolves around the maintenance of her Dark Cloud stance, which she could activate via 2 of her cards. This stance remains active for as long as she is the only character who uses attack cards. To keep track of her state, you can inspect the sword icon next to her picture. The stance itself doesn't provide any bonuses, but grants her abilities additional effects or higher multipliers.
Ok, c'ha una stance, un buff, che mantiene solo se lei è l'unica che gioca carte attack. E se hai questa stance le tue carte hanno degli effetti aggiuntivi, ok?
While it was hard to gauge her damage output from an early game perspective, I would fully expect her to dish out impressive numbers in the later stages of the game. That said, she's a jealous woman that won't tolerate anyone besides her. When another attack card is played, her stance ends. This is problematic because without it she is mediocre at best, and no fancy animation helps her cause. She does have a card to retain Dark Cloud stance for a single turn, but that rarely makes a difference, as it would need a retain effect to be timed appropriately. Unfortunately, her ultimate doesn't grant her the stance either, so without an emergency button, you're at the mercy of card RNG. Therefore, she really wants to be paired with characters that rarely or never attack. Support.
Ok, vuole giocare con PG che non usano carte attack. Punto. Perché altrimenti perde la stance e perde tutti gli effetti delle sue carte, ok?
Characters are the likeliest candidates to perform well alongside her.
Yeah, vuole
for
due
a comp that
support
is
in
all about
pratica.
buffing her damage, with skill and upgrade cards. Other noteworthy picks could be sub-DPS characters like Veronica or Hugo.
Vuole essere proprio hyper carry della serie. Se un alleato
stance.
attacca io non faccio più danno, quindi vedi tu, ok.
Veronica may be especially tolerable for Rin, since she provides much needed utility via her additional card draws. Overall, Rin may be a bit rough to play in the early game.
Ok, Rin all'inizio sarà un po' più difficile da giocare per via di questo.
That
Okay?
said, she oozes the hyper carry aura more than anyone, so I expect her to become highly relevant in Cizian's late game.
Lei è
especially when
l'hyper
new
carry
characters release that
comunque, ok.
complement her playstyle.
Va bene.
Luke is a hunter of the wind/order element and serves as another DPS character. He's one of
Vento
3 characters who
DPS.
use bullet cards as their main gimmick.
Anche lui usa i
Unlike
proiettili, ma a
Rinoa,
differenza di
however,
Renoa...
Luke generates different types of bullets, randomly selected from 5 possible options. His starter card required landing critical hits to create up to 2 bullets, which is awkward early on when characters lack reliable crit rate sources.
Ok, lui genera proiettili a random in una fascia di 5 carte e ha la passiva che quando critta genera proiettili. Che quindi dice in early game, essendo che non hai dei preset con crit, vedi che c'ha 3% di crit chance. È un po' una merda. Ma c'erano degli upgrade che ti garantivano i crit però, ok?
There was an upgrade card that fixed this by guaranteeing a critical hit, though it came at the cost of producing one less bullet.
Ah, ok, produce meno proiettili, quella che ti garantisce il crit hit, però, ok.
Fortunately, obtaining that particular epiphany during a dungeon run is entirely luck-based.
Yeah, però era un epiphany che
Aside
dovevi
from that
ottenere
minor
durante il
flaw,
dungeon, ok?
his bullet cards overall felt a bit undertuned. The damage multipliers were low, and the added effects didn't feel impactful.
Aveva moltiplicatori
Since he's
bassi,
clearly
yada
designed to be a
yada,
main damage
ok?
dealer, I'd expect those numbers to be adjusted before release.
Yeah, spera che lo buffino,
Other than
insomma.
that, Luke is very straightforward to play. His gameplay is similar to Chiron's, as his damage scales with the number of bullets exhausted per turn.
Ah,
However,
i suoi danni scalano con quanti proiettili consuma.
Since bullet cards are a much more specific requirement than just any exhaustible cards, Luke's ideal team composition is quite limited. Given that Rinoa generally avoids actively playing her bullets, the only real synergy comes from the 4-star Lucas, essentially an AoE-oriented version of Luke. The two of them actually pair quite well. Luke benefits from bullets used by Lucas, while Lucas performs follow-up attacks whenever bullets are consumed, and both characters can enhance bullet damage. Overall,
ok, lui sta dicendo c'è l'altro 4 stelle che è quello con i capelli rossi con cui scomba, perché lui aumenta i suoi danni quando i bullet vengono consumati e Luca invece spara dei follow-up attack quando vengono consumati e, e potenziano il bullet damage. Ok.
Luke is another damage dealer that likely gets better later into the game. However, unlike Rin, who clearly shows potential, I think the developers need to take a second look at his multipliers.
Devono migliorare i
Otherwise, I don't see
moltiplicatori
how
per
he
lui,
could ever
ok?
fulfill his role as a main DPS.
Ok.
With that, I've covered all of the 5-star characters available during CZN's close beta test.
Ah, ha fatto lui una... Ok, si è fatto lui una tier list in base alle informazioni che ci ha appena dato. Ok. Ci sta. Yeah, ha fatto lui una tier list in base alle informazioni che ha appena dato. Ovviamente senza tener conto dei 4 stelle. Ok, se ho capito bene, loro tre sono in B. Penso che lo dica adesso. Sono in B perché sono i più complicati e i più difficili da gestire. Perché lei, se giochi altre carte attack, non fa danno. Lui aveva i moltiplicatori bassi e lei ti fotte le carte in mano. Yeah. Ok. Loro due... Ma lei per me è la mia pick priority proprio. Cioè. Meilin è la mia pick priority in caso. Vabbè, anche Rino ovviamente. No, in realtà un po' tutti, non è che me ne foto un cazzo. Però lei è abbastanza la mia preferita. No, senza tier list sarà la mia preferita.
To wrap things
Stai
up,
zitto,
here's
sì.
my approximation
Non
of the
sapevo
tier
un
list to
cazzo
give
di
you a
sta
point
tier
of
list.
reference. Keep in mind though that some kits may receive
L'ho
adjustments,
detto anche
so make sure
prima.
to keep an eye out on launch day. For anyone who skipped ahead or wants a brief summary, let me give you the TLDR. Kalib and Meilin rank above the rest, though for different reasons. Kalib was by far the most powerful unit during the playtest, excelling in AoE damage, breaking and shielding.
Beh, toughness damage, break facili, shield, yeah.
Unless her kit undergoes major adjustments, she's offering the smoothest early game experience. That said, I do expect some rebalancing, so don't go blindly rerolling
Però
forward.
ovviamente, raga, penso che bilanceranno tipo tutti i PG in un modo o nell'altro. Cioè, ci saranno cambiamenti su ogni singolo PG. Che Stella solo continua a spammare cose. Vabbè, anyways, ok.
Meilin, on the other hand, stood out through her ability to apply fire/passion weakness to
Mettere debolezza in sto gioco è forte. I vantaggi di avere l'elemento forte contro un nemico sono tantissimi. Yeah. L'abbiamo visto ieri tra weakness damage, il toughness damage, yeah.
enemies, something no other unit could replicate.
Nessun
While
altro
she's a
PG lo
solid
fa.
single target damage dealer and breaker on her own right, it's this unique utility that secures her place as a likely staple in passion teams for the foreseeable future. The middle tier contains characters that were well-rounded and performed convincingly in their respective roles. Chiron was perhaps the hardest hitting damage dealer overall, offering excellent AoE alongside strong single
Che
target
non era quello che
damage.
faceva più
His
danni,
numbers
ok.
came at the cost of requiring more setup than others, and
Ma
with
aveva
no
bisogno
utility
di
to
un
speak
team
of, I
e
can't
di
rightfully rank
carte
him
da
higher.
trovare cioè,
Renoa and
specifiche.
Hugo are both highly self-reliant DPS characters built around the same
Loro due
gimmick,
sono
extra
buoni.
attacks. Renoa plays more as a burst DPS and is poised to become one of the most effective boss killers in the game, while Hugo leans towards sustained damage, potentially doubling as a cost-effective sub-DPS. Similarly, Veronica is another extra attack-oriented sub-DPS, though she's far more dedicated to that role, as she practically plays without
Vabbè,
any
sta
active
ripetendo un po'
attacks.
quello che ha detto fino ad
Given her
ora,
low AP
insomma.
consumption and ability to provide extra card draws, I can see
Fa
her slot
pescare
into virtually
carte,
any
fa
team.
ciclare bene,
However,
costa pochi
she doesn't bring
appigli.
much synergy, so I expect her to remain
Ma
more
non
of
ha
a
delle
generalist
sinergie
pick
specifiche,
rather than a
ok?
best in slot choice.
Non lo
Magda
so,
is a
per
chic-
me il fatto che lei non metta le sue carte nel mazzo, ma io tenda a toglierle e fa pescare, la rende quasi automaticamente interesse in un gioco del genere. Vedremo. Da come ha detto il kit lui, mi sono fatto l'idea che lei sia turbo broken, Veronica.
who deals damage through counterattacks. For optimal performance,
Ma
she prefers
Cassius è un rank A? Cioè un 4 stelle? È un 4 stelle? Io pensavo fosse 5, ecco perché non è qua.
teammates who provide additional shields or damage
Comunque
reduction,
sono dei 4 stelle che ho visto che sono giga broken a prescindere, quindi
which somewhat limits
cioè
her
questa è semplicemente la
flexibility.
lista dei 5
That
stelle,
said,
ma...
she still functions well as a general sustainer. Given how thoroughly she was outclassed by Kalib, I placed her at the bottom of this tier, though that could easily change once we see the balance adjustments.
Ok, bisogna vedere cosa hanno
The bottom
cambiato.
tier
Ok.
includes characters that I believe could use a bit of rework, or perhaps just struggled to shine during the early game. Orlea is a support who blends multiple roles, sub-DPS, amplifier, and, most
c'ha
notably,
troppi ruoli,
an excellent
dai.
healer. Her gimmick of summoning and evolving creatures can feel a bit slow, and it doesn't pair well with teammates who compete for hand space. Given these limitations,
Occupa troppe
I'd
carte in
expect
mano,
more
lei è
payoff for
l'unico
making her
problema che
work,
ha.
ideally by allowing her to more
Ed è
easily
lenta
juggle all three
da
of
far
her
evolvere le
roles.
creature, ok?
Rin is a selfish DPS and perhaps the clearest example of a hyper carry in the current roster. She needs to maintain her stance for optimal performance,
Problema che
which
ci ho detto
requires her
prima.
allies to avoid actively attacking. Since her ability to enter that stance was somewhat limited during the playtest, she could feel awkward to play at times. Her damage numbers look promising though, so I fully expect her to scale well into the late game, especially once more characters release who can support her demanding playstyle. Finally, Luke is another main damage dealer focused entirely on using and buffing bullet cards. Since he works best alongside others who do the same, he currently has only one ideal partner, his brother Lucas.
Suo
Unless
fratello
more
Lucas è il
bullet-based
suo
characters
partner
appear in the
migliore,
future,
sa.
his damage numbers will need some attention. Otherwise, I see little reason to pick him over other options.
Ok.
So there you have it.
Ok, comunque ha spiegato tutto molto bene, quindi ci sta che si è fatto la sua tier list in base alle informazioni, ok. Comunque sì, lei ovviamente più supporti escono che non usano carte attack è meglio, e più trova sinergie probabilmente, poi dipende. Lei è tipo una boss killer, giga danno, single target burst, va bene. Lui è AOE damage, lui è generico buono. Lei è... Vabbè, poi bisogna vedere come li bilanciano praticamente. Ok, però almeno ti fai una bella idea dei personaggi. Un altro video della Madonna. Bravo, come sempre. Buon Gazzatabi. Un altro video della Madonna. Vi lascio il suo link ancora, anche qua. Questo è un altro gran video. Ci sta. Mi piace.